I'm Rob Weissman. I'm from Waltham. I'm 42 years old.
And how did you get involved with the Boston Renegades?
So I started with working with people with disabilities in college at Hofstra University, and I became great friends with a lot of people with different disabilities. And when I graduated college, one of my friends who I was friends with in school was visually impaired. He called me, told me about a team that was getting started up in this area, and I started coaching in 2000, went and checked it out, fell in love with it, dragged a couple of my good friends into it with me, and pretty much started coaching in 2000 up in Lowell, Massachusetts with another team. And then in 2003, the team from the Boston Renegades, they were looking for a coach. They asked me to come down, and I started coaching with them ever since.
So had you coached baseball prior to this?
Nothing more than the guy who writes out the lineups on your intramural softball team.
So how is it different? The game itself, as well as working with players that you sort of need to help them more with just coaching them on their stance, but where to go and
yeah.
things
So from
like
a
that?
game standpoint, one of the main differences is you got to be quiet. When someone hits a ball, it's not cheer and scream. It's everyone's got to be quiet, which is not natural for somebody. That someone hits the ball, that's where the action is. The people stand up and cheer. You got to be dead silent so the batter can hear the base and the player can hear the ball. That's like one of the biggest differences between the two games that you'd see as a sighted person. From a coaching perspective, it really challenges your communication skills. Actually, a funny story. One thing that I learned early on is you don't have to yell to be heard, because this field's so silent. So you can just talk at this level, and they can hear you across the field to communicate with your ball players.
So tell me about some of the rule changes the rule differences between beep baseball and regular baseball.
All right, so 4 strikes instead of 3. There's no walks. The pitcher's on the same team as the hitter. The bases are 100 feet down the line as opposed to 90. The bases are 10 feet in foul territory. I was just looking for one. They're 10 feet in foul territory to avoid collisions. The ball has to travel at least 40 feet to be a fair ball. When you hit the ball, it's random as to which base is going to go off. You don't know. So you can run to first, you can run to third. It's not always run to first like in baseball. That's it. Offensively, those are the main differences between baseball.
So is this, how long has beep ball been around? Do you know the history of this sport?
Mid-70s.
Yeah?
So the mid-70s, it got its start. There's a volunteer organization called I forget the name of it, the Pioneers. I forget. There's the Pioneers, the telephone pioneers in the Midwest. They actually turned around and they created the ball out of broken payphone parts, or not broken payphones, but used payphone parts to make the actual beeping ball. And that's where it got its start in the original 70s in the Midwest, and it's really grown. And I think this year we have potentially the most teams we've ever had in the league at any one point in time.
So from a player standpoint, some players are completely without sight, other players have different levels. How does that come into play? Is it sort of considered cheating if you're not as without your sight as other players, or is there some of that, or how does that work?
Yeah, you're always suspect when you turn around and you travel and you see these guys with these giant Coke bottle lenses on, and they're walking around just like you and I would be. But when you go under the blindfold, everyone's in the same playing field. When you go under the blindfold, it's that's what the blindfold's the great equalizer. And these guys are all supposed to have certificates of blindness, so that they've been deemed legal blind. So we have various level of guys from totals to partials, but it does make a big difference. One of the things I've found as a coach over the years, and this is a generalization, not every player fits into this, but when you get a new person, if you take 2 people that have never played baseball before, and one's been total their whole life, they've never seen, they pick up the defensive side of the game better. Their hearing's maybe more tuned. Guys who have a partial sight, they will generally still use their sight, what little sight they have left, to get around, so the hearing's not as tuned, but they'll pick up the offensive side of the game better because it's easier for them to see a swing and see the mechanics of a swing. It's a lot harder for someone who's a total their whole life to fully understand all the different pieces of the actual swing and the weight shift that goes into it.
So for some of the players who've more recently lost their sight, have you noticed this to be therapeutic with them?
Yeah,
or?
Absolutely. We have one rookie you met, Tim, and generally what will happen to a lot of people, they lose their sight. There's depression, there's anger, there's a lot of things that people will go through. And especially people like Tim. We have another player, Pam. She was a fast pitch softball player. They just never thought they'd be able to do something like this again, and to be on an equal playing field with peers and be able to compete against people like you is therapeutic for them. And just being able to play a sport again as a team. In New England, there's no team sport for a visually impaired person. So we're the only team sport for an adult for visually impaired people.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much. This is great. Thanks for letting me participate.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very excited.